Okay, attachment theory. There is a lot of misinformation and misuse of the direction of how you want to use attachment theory. So I'm going to unpack it just a little bit. Okay, so you've all heard of it, right? It's the attachment patterns that began forming when you were a kid, and you take it with you when you walk into meetings, when you show up in your marriage or with your partnership, influencing how you lead and affecting what happens when somebody you care about pulls away. And some of the statistics around attachment theory are pretty startling. There was a major meta-analysis that looked at nearly 10,000 kids and found that only about 53% of kids were securely attached to their mamas. It was focused on mothers. Now that's about half, okay? Now it doesn't mean that the other half were badly parented. It doesn't mean that at all. Attachment is much more complex than a statistic. So put on your critical thinking caps for a moment. We're gonna look at what's important underneath this and research that applies not only to our families, but to the way we relate to people throughout our lives. And at heart, it's a fundamental human question. When I need you, what happens? When I need you, what happens? I'm going through that right now with my partner, my husband of 30 years. I'm getting tests for cancer right now. The odds are high that I don't have cancer, and as you can imagine, I'm deeply distressed. My husband isn't meeting any of my needs at all, and I've been so angry and irritated, like, just be here for me for this. So I'm going to use that as part of the example when we go through this. So when I'm scared, can I come to you? These are the questions to ask yourself. When I'm overwhelmed, will you even notice? When I disagree with you, is our relationship still okay, especially at work? When I make a mistake, am I still welcomed? And do I still belong even when I make a mistake? When I need some distance, will you interpret that as rejection and make that all about you? And when something happens between us, can we find our way back to each other? And that's what I'm working on with my husband right now with these tests that I'm going. Now, take those same questions into the workplace. When I make a mistake, can I tell my boss? Can you tell your boss when you make a mistake? When I disagree with someone with more authority than myself, what happens? When I don't know the answer, can I say so, right? When something goes badly between two people, do we address it or do we pretend nothing happened while the tension continues to rise underneath? These are different relationships, of course. Your boss is not your parent, and your coworker is not your spouse or your partner, but we bring the same human nervous system and our patterns into all of them. Attachment theory started with the work of psychiatrist John Bowley and was expanded through the research of Mary Ainsworth. One of its central concepts is something called a secure base. Secure base. When we as children experience someone as available and responsive, that security gives us greater freedom to go out into the world, right? This is an important distinction because attachment isn't simply about being close. Healthy connection also makes room for independence. So your 35-year-old daughter maybe can still need her mother. Your 60-year-old partner can still experience fear of rejection. Just ask me, I'm 62, right? Your 70-year-old sister can experience something that takes her right back to being a kid again who wasn't included, right? Your adult son, he might want complete independence and still need to know that if something falls apart, that he can call you, right? And your highly accomplished executive that you work for can still walk into a meeting carrying a very human sensitivity to rejection, disapproval, criticism, or even exclusion. We grow up, we become parents, we become executives, we build careers and families, but we don't graduate from needing meaningful human connection. We don't graduate from that. And I want to be careful here because attachment theory has become incredibly popular online. I'm seeing it everywhere. We hear people say, I'm avoidant, my husband is anxious, my employee is avoidant, or my mother made me insecurely attached, as though these few categories can explain an entire human being. And that is a linear way of taking very complex information and making it super simple and dumbing it down. We are not simple, nor can we dumb it down. The greatest value of attachment theory isn't using it to diagnose everybody around us, although I know what that's like and I want to do it too. Okay, its greatest value is helping us become more conscious of what may be happening underneath and the behavior from the people that we're experiencing it from. So I've got 3 things, of course, that we can use in both our families and our workplaces. The first is become curious about what's underneath the behavior. So let's go back to my husband. What's underneath the behavior with my husband? Become curious, Dr. Shawne. What's going on with your honey bunny about these tests and the concern about cancer? He's scared. My husband doesn't want to lose me, and it's too big and too overwhelming. Let's go to more mundane, everyday stuff. Your daughter doesn't call you back for several days, and then when you do call her again, she seems irritated that you even ask why she hasn't called back. Your partner becomes quiet during an argument, and you immediately decide, here we go again, right? He's shutting me out. Your mother calls 3 times because you haven't returned the first call. Or your teenager walks away during a difficult conversation, very normal teenage behavior, right? And you immediately interpret it as disrespect. Okay, now let's take it to work. You give somebody feedback, and suddenly they start defending every decision they ever made. Or a colleague who normally contributes becomes completely quiet during a disagreement. An employee asks you 3 times whether you're okay, with something that you've already approved of, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Somebody gets left off of an email and they react much strongly than you expected. It becomes a big, huge drama, right? Our brains love to assign meaning to behavior. Difficult, defensive, needy, disengaged, overly sensitive, controlling. That's a big one, right? High level emotional intelligence asks us to stay curious a little bit longer. This is critical thinking in action. And that question is, what might be happening underneath that behavior? When some people become worried about connection, they move toward us. They want reassurance. They want to talk about it. They call again. They ask another question. They want the disagreement resolved right now. That is so my style, okay? Other people do the opposite, and we usually marry them. This is my husband. They become quieter. They need distance. They stop talking because closeness during conflict feels overwhelming. And then, of course, like I said, those 2 people fall in love with each other. Okay, one says, talk to me. The other says, leave me alone. And then it becomes, why won't you talk to me? Followed by, because you won't leave me alone, right? So it's a never-ending cycle pattern of disconnect. Now, we can create a similar cycle at work. A manager senses that an employee is pulling away, so the manager starts checking in more and you feel micromanaged, right? The employee experiences the additional tension as pressure and withdraws even further. The manager sees more withdrawal and increases the pressure. Pretty soon, each person's attempt to solve the problem is actually compiling the problem, making it bigger. So instead of immediately judging the behavior, become curious about what's underneath it. This takes some serious skill, you guys. It takes serious skill to be mindful like this. At home, you might say, I can tell something's changed. What happened for you just now? Or, do you need a little more time before we continue this? Very loving and tender way to create connection in family systems. Or something simple as, I'm here. We don't have to solve this right this second. I'm here, babe. At work, it might sound like, you got quiet when we started talking about this. What are you seeing that we might be missing? Oh, that's a good one to put on a post-it note. I'm going to say it again. What are you seeing that might be missing? Exquisite, curious conversation and question. Or something like, you seem concerned about this decision. Tell me what's coming up for you. High-level emotional intelligence. This doesn't mean accepting disrespectful behavior, not even close. Boundaries matter, yes. Accountability matters, yes. Performance absolutely matters. It means understanding that sometimes the behavior we're reacting to is somebody's attempt to manage what they're experiencing. And let's just make this even broader, there's so much frickin' stuff going on in the world. Our nervous systems are overwhelmed. We were not designed to be in this much chaos globally and have access to it every 10 minutes. The average person goes to their phone every 10 minutes. By the by, it takes 23 minutes to get your focus back. It really will behoove your mental health and your happiness, putting your phone to the side and picking and choosing when you look at politics or what all the distressing stuff, because I pick and choose, right? I grew up in a newsroom. I worked in newsrooms for over 10 years. I have to pick and choose when I look at the news. I can control what I can control, and one of them is voting, right? But I can control how much I inundate myself with painful information every 10 minutes. You with me? Okay. Number 2, back to attachment theory. The second is to make room for independence without automatically interpreting it as rejection. This is particularly important for those of us between parents and adult children, and even parents and little kids. We spend the first part of our parenting trying to create an environment of connection, then to discover most of loving our children as adults is learning how to tolerate separation. It's a letting go process. A grown child doesn't call you as often anymore. They start spending some holidays with their partner's family, ugh, or for some of us, yay. They make decisions without asking your opinion. They don't tell you everything anymore. And even when we intellectually understand this is part of adulthood, emotionally, it can still hurt. It can still feel like rejection. That is your sign that you have some internal work to do. You have some internal healing to do. Maybe even some grieving the loss of not having a child that you care for. And now they're adults, and letting them become adults. It's a big journey, right? Research on secure-based behavior in adult relationships has identified availability, encouragement, and non-interference as important components. There's something beautiful in that idea. Sometimes love sounds like, I'm here if you need me, instead of, why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you ask me? Versus, I'm here if you need me. That's what I did with my daughter this weekend when everybody got lice. I'm here if you need me. She was so distraught, which makes perfect sense. We all had to do the lice in our hair. Okay, you followed me? All right. Sometimes loving your adult child means allowing them to make a decision you would never make. And you just think it's the worst mistake in the universe and still remain connected while they make it. Woo! Is that high emotional intelligence? And leaders, they pay attention to this one. They need to pay attention to this one because the same principle has an implication and application at work. Sometimes leadership means I'm available if you need me without hovering over every decision and micromanaging, right? It means giving somebody an important assignment and resisting the urge to constantly check whether they're doing it your way. It means allowing talented people to develop their own judgment, and means recognizing that somebody disagreeing with you does not mean they don't respect you. There's a significant difference between being available and being intrusive, and you got to figure that out for yourself. The goal of a strong family isn't to create people who need us every minute. And the goal of strong leadership isn't to create employees who need our approval before making every single decision. We want relationships where people know they can come to us without surrendering their autonomy, their independence, and their authenticity. Number 3, here it is. You ready? The third is to get really good at returning to each other when something goes wrong. And this is what I'm in the midst of with my husband with this cancer concern right now. How can I come back? This might be the most important piece of all, because secure attachment does not mean families never fight. It doesn't mean parents always respond perfectly. It doesn't mean partners never hurt each other. And it doesn't mean we'll never get our feelings hurt with our siblings. Strong workplace relationships don't mean leaders never make communication mistakes. They make them all the time. They don't mean teams never disagree. It doesn't mean somebody never loses their composure or says something they wish they had never said, or wishes they had said it differently. We're human. We misunderstand each other. We get defensive. We lose our tempers. We say things badly. We miss signals. Sometimes we're exhausted and simply don't have our best communication available. So the question becomes, what happens next? That's the conversation I'm in with my husband. I'm waiting for test results today. What happens next? Can we come back and say something like, I didn't handle that very well? Can we say, I understand why that hurt you? Can we say to somebody we love, we're disagreeing right now, and I still love you, sweetheart? High level skill. And at first it feels awkward. And over time, because this is intimacy, this is true intimacy. Many of us are scared of intimacy or avoid it because we've been hurt and we don't want to be hurt again. Can we call our adult child today rather than allowing pride to turn one disagreement into 6 months of silence, 1 year of silence, sometimes 30 years of silence? And at work, can you as a leader walk back into somebody's office and say, I was frustrated in that meeting and the way I communicated, it wasn't effective. Let's try that conversation again. You're not technically saying I'm sorry. Apologizing doesn't mean the words I'm sorry. It's all about repair. Can you repair what just happened? Can a colleague say, I became defensive when you challenged my idea. I want to hear what you were trying to tell me. I couldn't hear it, an hour ago. Can we try again? That's repair. That is a form of apology. Can we repair instead of waiting for the other person to make the first move? We sometimes put enormous pressure on ourselves to get the relationships right, but it's not a one-stop shop. It's created through patterns. Every time somebody reaches for us and we respond, we're creating a pattern. Every time somebody tells us something difficult and we stay connected and curious and loving and tender, we become more independent without making them emotionally pay for that independence. We're creating patterns. And every time we as leaders make it possible for somebody to disagree with us without damaging the relationship, we're creating a pattern. We're creating a culture. And every time something happens between us and we find our way back to one another, we're creating a pattern. That's one of the things I'm going to focus on today with my honey bunny, okay? So attachment theory doesn't need you to become obsessed with diagnosing your mother, your brother, your husband, your boss, your colleague, your grandchild, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Use it to notice relationships differently. This is all about differently, okay? All right, I'll talk to you soon.